So, who's to blame when AI does harm? I mean, this question is rocketing out of science fiction and into our daily lives, and frankly, we don't have the answers yet. In this explainer, we're going to dig into the work of philosopher Kenneth Himma to try and build a framework for how we can even begin to tackle this. Let's get into it.
Okay, just imagine for a second. An advanced AI causes some real-world damage. Maybe it triggers a financial crash, or a self-driving car makes a fatal decision. Who's on the hook? Do you blame the person who coded it? The person who was using it? Or could the AI itself actually be at fault? This is not just a late-night dorm room question anymore. This is one of the biggest ethical puzzles we face today.
You know, before we even touch AI, let's just remember how messy blame can be, even with humans. Take the case of Robert Alton Harris. He committed truly horrific crimes, and on the surface, it seems like an open and shut case of responsibility. But when you look deeper, you find his life was, and I'm quoting here, a living nightmare of abuse and fetal alcohol syndrome that caused brain damage. Now, that doesn't excuse his actions, not at all, but it shows that even for people, assigning full blame can get really complicated. So if it's that tangled for us, where on earth do we start with a machine?
So to untangle all this, we need to build from the ground up. We need a clear set of ideas. And that first step is to define a really simple but totally crucial word. What exactly is an agent?
Okay, at its most basic level, an agent is just a being that is capable of performing actions. Simple enough, right? But what we count as an action, well, that's where it starts to get really interesting.
So here we hit our first really key distinction. We have to separate doings from actions. Doings are all the involuntary things your body just does without you thinking about it, right? Breathing, your hair growing, that kind of stuff. But actions are different. An action isn't just a thing that happens, it's caused by something inside you, a specific mental state.
And that key ingredient has a name. It's called an intentional state. It's just a fancy term for a mental state that's about something. It's not random. It's your desire for coffee that makes you walk to the kitchen. It's your belief that the light is red that makes you hit the brakes. It's the decision, the volition, that causes you to raise your hand. That's the difference. That's what turns a mere doing into a true action.
All right, so with that definition in mind, let's test it. What about an animal? Let's say a dog. Can a dog be an agent?
Yep, absolutely. A dog has desires, right? It wants that treat. It believes you're going to throw the ball. Those are intentional states, and they cause its actions. So a dog is definitely an agent. A tree, on the other hand, it just grows. That's a doing, not an action, because there's no mental state, no mind behind it. So a tree is not an agent.
Okay, so we've established a dog is an agent. But here's the thing. We don't hold a dog morally accountable for stealing a steak off the kitchen counter, do we? Why not? It's because being an agent is just the first filter. The next, bigger question is, what makes an agent a moral agent? A moral agent is an agent that we can and should hold accountable for what it does. That word, accountability, is everything here. It's a being that we actually expect to understand and follow certain moral rules.
And this leads us to another really useful distinction: the moral agent versus the moral patient. A moral agent, think of a typical adult, has duties and we hold them accountable. But a moral patient, like a baby or an animal, is someone we have duties to. We have a duty to protect them, but we don't hold them accountable for their own behavior. See the difference?
And this isn't just some new idea. It's a foundational concept in philosophy. The Routledge Encyclopedia of Philosophy puts it perfectly. Moral agents are those agents expected to meet the demands of morality. That single word, expected, is doing all the heavy lifting.
Now, of course, there are other ideas out there. Some have argued that just being interactive, autonomous, and adaptive is enough to be a moral agent. But as Himma points out, there's a huge problem with that view. The definition becomes way too wide. I mean, by that logic, a simple PC could be an agent. And worse, if you just add can cause moral harm, then a rattlesnake or a spider would qualify as a moral agent. And that just doesn't feel right, does it? It doesn't capture what we mean by accountability.
So, this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. We've gone from just a thing in the world to an agent, to a moral agent. But what's the one thing that's required to make that final, crucial leap? What is the secret ingredient for real moral responsibility?
Let's just follow the chain of logic here. To be a moral agent, you need to be accountable. Okay, for accountability to even make sense, you need things like free will and the ability to do moral reasoning, to actually grasp right from wrong. But what do both of those depend on? What's the foundation holding all of this up?
What's the one single fundamental capacity that underpins this entire structure of blame and responsibility?
Consciousness. According to this framework, the capacity for a subjective, first-person, inner experience that is the absolute, non-negotiable bedrock for moral responsibility.
And here's exactly why consciousness is the key. Think about it. Accountability. Punishment and praise are completely meaningless to a thing that can't feel shame or pride. Free will. Well, a non-conscious thing's behavior is just one of two things. Either it's random or it's determined, like a clock. There's no inner experience of choosing. And moral reasoning, that requires real understanding, semantics, not just shuffling symbols for good and bad around, which is just syntax.
This idea is perfectly captured in John Searle's classic Chinese room argument. Imagine you're locked in a room and you have a giant rulebook. Chinese characters are passed under the door and you use the rulebook to pass the correct characters back out. To someone outside, it looks like you understand Chinese perfectly, but you don't understand a single word. You have the rules, the syntax, but you have zero meaning, no semantics. Himma's argument is that this is exactly what our current AI is doing. It's a master of syntax, but without consciousness, it has no real understanding.
And so, this all leads us to one last staggering problem. For centuries, philosophers have talked about the problem of other minds. I can't prove you're conscious. I just assume you are because you're like me. So if we can't even be 100% sure about other people, how could we ever know for sure if a machine has actually woken up? And if we can't know that, how can we ever truly hold it responsible?